Up next in the broadcast, the International Atomic Energy Agency says it has new evidence of activity at North Korea's Yongbyon nuclear power plant. Pyongyang had shut it down as part of trust building in 2008, but 5 years later, it said it would revive it. Tougher sanctions on Russia for its aggressions into Ukraine stay high on the agenda at the current NATO summit in Wales, where world leaders have gathered to resolve several hot-button global issues. One of the world's leading trade shows for consumer electronics officially opens in Berlin, with many of the must-have gadgets on display from Korea's Samsung Electronics and LG. Primetime News begins now. Welcome to Primetime News on this Friday, live from Seoul. I'm Sean Lim.
And I'm Kang Chery. Thanks for joining us this evening. We begin with the exodus of Koreans heading home this weekend for the Chuseok Thanksgiving holiday.
An estimated 40 million people will be on highways, byways, and railways over the next couple days, and that's up 13% compared to last year, as people aim to make use of this year's extended 5-day holiday period. Travelers hoping to get an early jump on the rush began packing train and bus stations earlier this morning, with most tickets for the south of the country sold out for Saturday and Sunday. But if you were to leave now by car to Busan, it will take about 5 hours, which is just 30 minutes longer than the usual 4.5 hours. The roads are expected to be the most congested Saturday morning, according to the Transport Ministry, as well as Monday afternoon, when many people will begin their journeys back to the capital region.
And President Park Geun-hye has posted a holiday message to the country on Facebook, vowing to do her best to breathe new life into the Korean economy so that all Koreans can lead happy lives. She said, just like the full moon, she hopes the country comes together in a full circle to boost the economy so that all Koreans can enjoy prosperity and happiness. The president then went on to thank those who have to work over the holiday, including policemen and firefighters, and wish them, as well as the entire country, a warm and happy holiday. And in other news, South Korea has called on North Korea for the third time to accept its offer for high-level talks. The Unification Ministry says it's regrettable Pyongyang has not given a response yet, and added Seoul wants all inter-Korean issues to be resolved through dialogue. South Korea proposed a second round of high-level talks last month to discuss a possible round of reunions for families separated since the Korean War, as well as other pending issues. North Korea may have reconnected its plutonium production reactor at its Yongbyon nuclear test site. This is according to the International Atomic Energy Agency. Washington says it's a clear sign that Pyongyang is not ready to denuclearize. Our Shin Se-min has more.
In an annual report posted on its website, the International Atomic Energy Agency says it has seen releases of steam and water from a reactor at the Yongbyon nuclear complex. The latest update on the plant also quoted experts that said the North could be working on making plutonium for atomic bombs. The UN watchdog said it was continuing to monitor developments at the site via satellite imagery. The reactor site has technically been out of operation for years as North Korea destroyed its cooling tower in 2008 amid a trust-building phase with South Korea, China, the U.S., and other neighboring countries. In April 2013, the North said it would revive its old 5-megawatt reactor at the Yongbyon nuclear complex. Experts said then that it would take about half a year to revive the plant, but only if it hadn't fallen completely into disrepair. In January, the U.S. Director of National Intelligence said the North had enlarged the uranium enrichment facility and restarted the reactor as well, calling the moves a significant step in the wrong direction and a contrary move to the North's international commitments. The U.S. State Department said on Thursday that the activities signal Pyongyang's clear lack of commitment to denuclearization. Shin Se-min, Arirang News.
Meanwhile, Washington has reopened the so-called New York diplomatic channel with Pyongyang to discuss the release of 3 Americans detained in North Korea. New U.S. Chief Nuclear Envoy Sydney Seiler says the capture is a significant obstacle in improving their bilateral ties. Our Hwang Sung-hee has the details.
A matter of days after North Korea granted U.S. media a rare interview with the 3 American detainees, the United States said it had restarted its own diplomatic channel with the communist regime to secure their release. Speaking at a forum on Thursday, Washington's new chief nuclear envoy, Sydney Seiler, said efforts to bring the U.S. citizens home are being made through the New York Channel, as well as the Swedish embassy in Pyongyang. The so-called New York Channel refers to meetings between North Korea's UN delegation and U.S. officials. Seiler noted the 3 detainees have posed significant obstacles to U.S.-North Korea ties and urged Pyongyang to act in a humane and right way. Washington may not be alone in seeking to remove these barriers to friendlier ties. Letting CNN and the Associated Press interview the 3 Americans could be Pyongyang's latest attempt to push for fresh dialogue with Washington. North Korea has a history of using U.S. detainees as negotiating chips for talks with the United States. The latest developments come a couple of weeks before North Korea's foreign minister travels to New York City for the UN General Assembly. Attention is focusing on whether his trip could bring the 2 foes a little closer together. Hwang Sung-hee, Arirang News.
And staying with North Korea, Pyongyang will hand back a South Korean man who illegally crossed the border into the north. While the report did not provide details about when and where this man identified as Kim was arrested, it did say he entered the north via a third country and did so because of economic hardships here in the south. The report also says Kim asked authorities to live in North Korea with his wife, but that they persuaded him to return home. Kim will be returned next Thursday at the truce village of Panmunjom. Authorities are looking into a threatening parcel that was addressed to South Korean Defense Minister Han Min-gu. The Defense Ministry says the package included a 33-centimeter long knife, 20 grams of flour, and a letter which threatened to track down Han's family and, quote, seize them. The sender said he would punish Han for wagging his tongue, which would bring about a nuclear war on the Korean peninsula. Authorities have released surveillance footage of the suspect obtained from a convenience store where he appears to be sending the package. Officials are trying to identify the suspect. This is not the first time such a package was received, though. A similar parcel was sent last year to Han's predecessor, Kim Kwan-jin, who is now Korea's national security advisor.
Curry's comments came in response to
your gateway to the day's biggest stories in Korea and around the world. Breaking news, the hottest interviews, and a whole lot more. Join Arirang Sean Lim and Kang Chery from the heart of Seoul.
Begins now.
Primetime news, weeknights, live at 10 on Arirang TV.
Like I said earlier in the program, people here in Korea are already in a holiday mood as this year's Chuseok is an extended 5-day holiday starting tomorrow. And of course, this is when people prep for the holiday meals. But as our Kim Ji-yeon reports, an increasing number of shoppers are said to be shying away from the country's traditional style markets.
The government has been investing billions of dollars in the nation's traditional markets for more than a decade, but the efforts don't appear to be working to counter the rise of major supermarkets. According to data collected by Saenuri Party Representative Kim An-pyo, total sales at more than 1,500 traditional markets nationwide was slashed in half in 2013 from 12 years ago to $20 billion. They're losing business to more modern supermarkets whose total sales have been on a steady rise over recent years, hitting $44 billion in 2013. The shift has increased costs for more government support for traditional markets. More than $3 billion of government funds have been directed toward making traditional markets more accessible by modernizing their parking lots and entrances. But lawmaker Kim in his report pointed out that the money could be invested more wisely, such as by updating smartphone application software to make it easier for shoppers to find the markets and pay for their goods. He added that more research needed to be done on finding ways to help these traditional markets. Kim Ji-yeon, Arirang News.
And with the extended holiday period, many Koreans have opted to travel abroad this year. And for those of you that do, you might want to keep in mind that starting today, duty-free limits for those returning to Korea will be raised. This move, which is part of the Finance Ministry's tax revisions, raises the duty-free allowance to $600 from $400. It's the first time the ceiling has been raised in 26 years. Foreign currency deposits in Korea hit an all-time high in August. The Bank of Korea attributed this rise to the rise in Chinese yuan deposits, which saw the biggest on-month gain. Yuan deposits that used to come under 1% about a year ago now take up nearly 30% of the total foreign currency deposits in Korea. This means a record both in terms of total volume as well as the portion this currency accounts for.
One of the world's leading trade shows for consumer electronics officially opened in Berlin on this Friday. The event will showcase the latest must-have gadgets, and one of the top attractions this year are said to be TVs. Hung Jie has the details.
Some major electronics companies, including Korea's very own Samsung and LG, are set to show off their latest high-end gadgets in this year's IFA, one of the world's largest consumer electronics trade shows that's held every year in Berlin.
Of course, if you consider the trends in the TV market, it's UHD, the ultra-high definition TV sets. Of course, it's the curved TV. Brand new in the market, and every of the big manufacturers will present their own curved TV. And overall, it's the connected world, connectivity. It's the big trend for everyone in the market.
And connected devices are taking center stage.
We have a Spotify Connect speaker where you can stream music through the Spotify app. We also have various Bluetooth solutions for multi-pairing. By this I mean you can connect several Bluetooth devices at the same time and also play music.
Japanese manufacturer Toshiba is no exception, unveiling a television that acts as a digital personal assistant when you team it up with a smartwatch. It also doubles up as a mirror.
If you have this digital watch, for example, then the watch sends body mass data to the TV, so you can see how many calories you used yesterday, how many steps you took, what exercise you have to do today. The TV can tell you in the morning by looking in the mirror what the weather will be and what meetings you have.
The 5-day expo kicks off on Friday with more than 1,500 exhibitors from around the globe taking part. Hwang Jie, Arirang News.
A new report by the World Health Organization shows that one person dies as a result of suicide every 40 seconds. Kim Min-ji reports on how economic factors are usually pinpointed as the main reason.
Over 800,000 people commit suicide worldwide every year. That means someone takes their own life every 40 seconds. A new report by the World Health Organization showed low and middle-income nations accounted for about 75% of all cases around the world. It stated the most common methods of suicide range from self-poisoning to hangings to the use of firearms. The report explained that restricting access to means of suicide is effective prevention as seen in developed countries, adding that governments need to come up with stronger measures. Only 28 countries are known to have national suicide prevention strategies. By age, the WHO said the suicide rate was the highest among those aged 70 and older, and that suicide is the second leading cause of death in young people aged 15 to 29. Margaret Chan, the Secretary General of the WHO, said the report is a call for action to address a large public health problem which has been shrouded in taboo for far too long. The WHO added that another way to prevent suicide is responsible reporting by media. The report comes ahead of World Suicide Prevention Day on September 10th, which raises awareness about suicide and suicide prevention around the world. Kim Min-ji, Arirang News.
Well, here's a story that may remind you of those protein bars made out of insects from the movie Snowpiercer. A UN report says it may not be long until insects play a critical role in preventing a global food shortage. And our Yu Lian has more on how the Korean government wants to help support this industry.
Could we be eating insects as part of our regular diets in just a few decades? The UN Food and Agriculture Organization suggests that it might be a necessity. In a report, the agency said the world will need twice its current food supply by 2050 and said eating bugs would help stave off the effects of a crisis. And Korea is already taking steps in that direction. Officials from the Ministry of Agriculture, Food and Rural Affairs said Thursday that a total of 7 different insects could be cleared for sale in markets, including beetles and crickets, by 2016. The insects might not just be used for food, but for medicinal purposes and pest control. It's an industry the government expects to grow to about $684 billion by 2020. Local hospitals like Yonsei Severance have already begun researching how insects could be included in patients' diets, as they're good sources of protein and are easier to digest than meat. Insects are also known to contain good fats that include calcium and iron. Yurian, Arirang News.
Seeking to counter Russian aggression, NATO leaders approved plans for a rapid response force in Eastern Europe that can quickly mobilize if an alliance country in this region were to come under attack.
For more, we turn to Son Jung-in at the News Center. Jung-in, so this has been agreed to by members during the two-day summit.
Yes, NATO Secretary General Anders Fogh Rasmussen said the members approved plans to post several thousands of troops in the region if an alliance country were to come under attack, as he declared the summit to a close. The approval by the 28-nation alliance comes even as ceasefire talks are underway between Ukraine, Russia, and separatist rebels in Minsk to end months of fighting in eastern Ukraine. Rasmussen said the new High Readiness Unit would send a clear message to potential aggressors. He said the Quick Response Force would give NATO a continuous presence in Eastern Europe, with alliance countries contributing forces on a rotational basis. Meanwhile, the threat posed by the Islamic State overshadowed some of the NATO summit's official agenda, yet the leaders still spent a considerable amount of time discussing the crisis in Ukraine. The recent food scandals in China have well been documented, but now we're learning the nation is dealing with a different type of scare. Some of China's biggest water brands are facing some tough questions about the quality of their products after authorities call them out for having unsafe levels of bacteria. Our Kim Hyun-bin reports.
This 19-liter water cooler bottle produced by Wahaha is China's most popular water brand, but customers may be getting a bit more than they paid for. Food safety authorities in the country said tests have revealed that Wahaha's water contains nearly 8 times more bacteria that safety standards in China allow. Another top 10 water company in China, Yibao, registered bacteria levels that exceeded 1,500 times the regulated limits.
8 popular drinkable water brands have failed to meet the safety standards.
The reason? Most of the firms were found to be recirculating their water bottles without sanitizing them. Food authorities say some firms simply filled them with tap water and did not follow proper purification procedures. Some experts have pointed out that pollution throughout the country may have been a contributing factor. In recent months, contaminated materials were brought into industrial zones in parts of the country, polluting water sources around them. The revelations have put Chinese people at ill ease, with a lack of options, as temperatures in some regions are still dealing with summer temperatures in the 30s. Kim Hyun-bin, Arirang News.
And Google is facing federal charges for failing to prevent children from making purchases on mobile devices without their parents' consent. The internet giant has promised to pay out $90 million in refunds to parents whose credit cards were unfairly billed for purchases built into children's video games like Ice Age Village and Air Penguins. The settlement was announced by the U.S. Federal Trade Commission after thousands of complaints were filed since 2011, when the Google Play App Store allowed children to make in-app purchases that cost anywhere from 99 cents to as much as $200. Google said it revised its billing practices in March so that parents are given a choice of whether or not to require a password when their kids buy virtual tools in games. And over in Argentina, scientists have excavated fossil remains of a dinosaur that are remarkably complete and well preserved. Paleontologists say the dinosaur weighed 65 tons and measures 26 meters long with an 11-meter neck, equivalent to the length of 7 Tyrannosaurus rexes. It took them 5 years to pull the remains of the massive animal, which was found in southern Patagonia in Argentina. This newly discovered dinosaur, known as Tyrannosaurus, which means fearer of nothing, belongs to the largest dinosaur group known as Titanosaurs. According to researchers, it lived 77 million years ago in a temperate forest of South America and was so enormous that it would have been unlikely to be threatened by any other dinosaurs. And that wraps up our look at international stories making headlines around the world.
Hello and welcome to sports. First things first, let's get to football. South Korea hosted Venezuela for the first of 2 friendly fixtures, and it all went down at Busan Sports Complex just west of Seoul. Now 35-year-old striker Lee Dong-guk joins South Korea's Century Club with 100 caps as he gets the start. And getting to the match, Venezuela's frontman Solomon Rondon nets the opener, but Korea's Lee Myung-ju equalizes in the 32nd minute. Now second half, the new Century Club member and the K-League's top scorer Lee Dong-guk, he comes alive. He scores 2 from inside the penalty box, and South Korea takes this match 3-1. And sticking with football, South Korea has a new head coach. His name is Uli Stilica. He's German, he's a former player, and now he's in charge. The Taeguk Warriors' new head coach, who's heading here on Monday, wasn't linked to the job until Friday's announcement by the Korea Football Association. Now, the 59-year-old's international experience includes stints as head coach of Switzerland, Germany's youth teams, and the Ivory Coast. Signed through the 2018 World Cup in Russia, his immediate focus will be the 2015 Asian Cup in January. And moving on to baseball in the country, let's get to Friday's top KBO matchup between the NC Dinos and the Nexen Heroes in Mokdong. Now NC looking to snap a 5-game skid has Eric Hacker on the mound, Nexen, Henry Sosa. We go to the first inning, Park Min-woo, he triples to start. Then next batter, Kim Jong-ho hits him in. It's 1-0 NC. Now we go to the bottom of the frame, Nexen's Park Byung-ho, who hit 4 homers the day before, drives in 2 with this hit, and 1 comes in off an error. It's 4-1 at the end of it. Now third inning, Lee Seung-yeol, he drives in 2 of 3 runs there. Then next inning, he drives in another. Now Nexen starts to run away with it. Then chime in Park Byung-ho once again. 6th inning, he hits his 46th home run of the year. And finally, Nexen goes on to win this one 10-1. Looking at the other games, LG takes down Tusan 5-3, Samsung beats Hanwha 8-0, and finally, SK crushes Lotte 12-3. And moving on to the U.S. Open, Roger Federer faced off against Gaël Monfils in the quarterfinals, and it seemed for a moment that an upset was brewing in Flushing Meadows. It was match point in the 4th set with Monfils serving, but Federer saved the match point and then another. A double fault by the Frenchman gave the set to Federer, who then showed why he's one of the all-time greats, sweeping the next 2 for the match. He faces Marin Cilic, who advanced by beating Thomas Berdych in the semis. And finally, American football fans are rejoicing as the NFL season kicked off on Thursday, with the defending Super Bowl champions, the Seattle Seahawks, dominating the Green Bay Packers 36-16. The remaining opening games kick off on Sunday and Monday over in the U.S. Well, that does it for now. This has been Stephen Che. Have a wonderful Chuseok holiday. And now, the weather.
TGIF everyone, welcome. I'm Kim Bo-kyung with your weather updates. It was a nice and sunny day here in Korea with partly cloudy skies. Now, some good news that the weather will continue throughout the Chuseok holiday period. On the day of Chuseok, there is a tradition of making a wish upon a full moon, and this year we should be able to enjoy the second brightest full moon of the year at around 5:57 p.m. in Busan and about 6:08 p.m. here in Seoul. As for tomorrow, that is, it is shaping up to be another sunny day in most parts of the nation, and there is a slight possibility that those in Gyeongsang-namdo province and Jeju could get light passing showers, but it won't be much. Other than that, the mercury should rise above 30 degrees in most regions, and also keep in mind that there will be a big gap in temperatures from day to night. On to Saturday's readings. Seoul soars to 32, Daegu and Gwangju to 30 and 31. As for other places, Jeju makes it to 27, Dokdo and Mount Kumgang to 26. That does it for me for now. Have a wonderful Chuseok, and I'll be back with more updates after midnight.
Well, that sounds like great news for the holiday weather. Thanks, Po-kyung. And that's primetime news for this Friday. I'm Sean Lim.
And I'm Kang Chery. We'll be off for the holiday, and we'll see you back here same time next Thursday. Have a great weekend, and happy Chuseok, everyone.